Hey friends, it's RSKT, and welcome to the second part of my Deluge Video Manual, where I'm going to teach you all I know about using the Synthstrom Deluge. Also, just before we get started, there's one more thing that I forgot to mention in my previous video. If we hold Shift and Learn and twist this knob, it dims our lights on the Deluge, and that might be really useful to you, especially if you're sitting in bed next to your significant other and the light of the Deluge is super bright and is keeping them awake. So yeah, Shift and Learn is for that. In this video, we're going to mainly be focusing on clip view, so make sure that this little blue light is lit, and we're going to explore the different sequencing options we have available to us on the Deluge. So when we're in clip view, we can choose whether we want our track to be a synth track, kit track, MIDI, or CV track. We can also use audio tracks as well, which we're not going to get into in this video. For this video, we're mainly going to be focusing on the synth and kit tracks. So we might go over some sort of synth track stuff first, and then we'll just press the kit button, and that just toggles it into a drum kit. We can use these audition pads at the side to audition those sounds. So we'll make sure that synth is highlighted. And let's get started. So when we're in a synth track, we basically have access to synth sounds. So this is the first patch that comes available on the Deluge, and we can scroll through different presets by twisting the select knob up here. There's literally hundreds of them. But we're just going to use the first one for this example. So we've already figured out that this is how we play our sound, but if we actually listen closely and go up, you'll notice that it is in the key of C major, and it's following a particular scale. So that brings us into the scale mode option. So if I unselect this, it's just going to remove that scale feature and go up chromatically, just like you would on a keyboard. So now it's got all the white and all the black notes. Pressing scale again, we can see the word major flashes up. So this is C major. If you want to change the scale, you just press Shift and scale, and now we're in minor. There's the Dorian scale, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, and Locrian. We might go over how to create your own scales and edit them in a later video, but for now, we're just going to mainly focus on sequencing. So sometimes playing around with patches can be, a little bit frustrating just to use the audition pads off to the side. So if we press this little button here, we enter the Isomorphic Keyboard layout. And this is kind of laid out like a guitar. I hear some people saying like a bass guitar. I don't play bass. But yeah, it's pretty intuitive. The well-lit pads show the root note. So there's C4, C2, C5, and if we follow all of the lit pads, we're going to go up the scale. The Isomorphic Keyboard is really cool. I might actually make a completely separate video going into this in depth and how to use it, as well as editing your own scales, but I just thought that I would point it out here so that you can have a little bit more of a play, especially with different octaves on the Deluge. Also worth noting, if we press the scale button, we can just see the root note lit up. So I'm going to leave scale on for now, and I might actually choose the Dorian scale because I just prefer it a little bit more, and we'll turn the keyboard off. So to enter notes into the Deluge, we can just tap anywhere on the sequencer, and now our notes are entered. If we want to extend these notes, think of it just like a piano roll. We can press and hold a note, and while that note is being held down, reach across and tell it where we want it to go to. If you made a mistake and you want to move this up or down, you can just press and hold this and twist this knob. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. You're not limited to this view. This is like a big canvas, so you can just scroll up and down as you will. Each of the root notes, like the octaves, are going to be highlighted in the audition pads. So let's make something that sounds maybe a little bit more interesting so that we got something better to work with. Okay, so without getting too carried away with what I did with the effects there, let's say we wanted this to be longer than 1 bar, because right now we've only got this 1 bar and it's looping. So what we do is we hold Shift and twist this top select knob, which has a little left and right arrow next to it. So if I twist this to the right, we can see that there's this white box that's slowly revealing like the rest of our track. So if we turn this all the way, we get to 2 bars. So our sequence is still there. If we twist this knob, we can jump back, and now we can jump forward. That's a bit annoying. So what we need to do is zoom out. So if we press and hold this top knob and give it a little twist to the left, we've now zoomed out, and we can see the rest of our sequence. Now, obviously we could go in and enter in new notes and everything like that. But what I want to do is just kind of make a little bit of a variation on what we've already got here. So I'm going to twist this back, which just constrains it back to 1 bar. Press Shift and press this knob in. That's just duplicated our first bar into our second bar. So now I'll twist this knob while pressing it and move over to the second bar, and we'll make some changes. Yeah, that'll do for now. So duplicating that sequence was nice and fast, but it's also worth noting that we can actually copy and paste sequences. So let's say, for example, the second half of this bar, we wanted to copy it into a new bar. So we'll just draw a new bar in here. What we do is go learn an input and press this knob in, and you'll see the word copy come up. Go to the next bar, press Shift, hold learn an input, and press this button in. And now that has been copied across. I don't really want that there though, so I'm just going to get rid of that bar. Copy and paste is really useful because you can actually copy and paste between clips. So let's say I wanted this exact sequence. I'll copy that. I'll go into a different synth patch. That sounds horrible, but that'll do. Shift, learn, press that. Fantastic. Well, we're here too. Let's say we wanted to just pitch this whole thing up or down an octave. We can just twist this knob while holding it down, and that will do that. Just gonna delete that clip now because we don't really need it. I'm just going to make a new clip and choose a nice pad sound. So I'm going to make this one go for 4 bars. All right, so let's say our first chord is this. The main reason I'm doing this is purely to demonstrate this feature, by the way. Let's say I want this chord to last over to the second bar, but we've got like a lot of notes and I just want to extend that tail, but you know, we've already extended the tail to here. How do we do that? So let's have a quick listen first. Maybe we'll make the second chord go up here. So obviously, you know, we could zoom out and just extend the tail like that. But there might be some circumstances where you want notes to overlap. Like maybe when you want a note here, but we want that to trail over into the next bar. So the way we do that is hold down the notes that we want to copy, go across to the next bar, hold this knob in, and press. And now that chord has been extended over 2 bars. I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to mute that track for now. I'm not even sure we'll use it. And we'll just go back to our bass track here. Hey, jumping in from the future here. There is one thing that I completely forgot to mention in this video, and I want to throw it in here, and that is live recording. So let's say that we have a synth track here. If I press the record button and press play, we're going to get that count in, that 1, 2, 3, 4. If you watched the previous video, I showed that if by pressing the shift and the select knob and then scrolling to the record section, you can turn on count in, because I think that mine was off by default. So definitely something that you might want to turn on. And basically that allows us time to get ready to start recording. So I'm going to hit play. Right, and that's just going to loop. Now, the problem with that is that we didn't have a metronome to keep us in time. So let's undo that. If you want that to happen, you just press shift and press the metronome button. Now, if I hit record and play, we'll have that metronome. Still a little bit out of time, but you can adjust your quantized settings if you want by pressing the shift select knob, going into record again, and go to the quantize section. I'm going to leave mine. Quantizing doesn't affect what you've already put in though. It only affects what is going to happen after you've changed those settings. So just keep that in mind. Now, it's also worth noting that if I wanted to record anything else over this, it's not going to continually go into the next bar. Going to loop back like this. So if you have already determined the length of your sequence, it's going to loop back from there. So just keep that in mind. Just going to clear these notes out. Now, finally, if we go into the isometric keyboard layout, let's just pick a nicer sound. Cool. We can do the same thing here, and you'll see a little red marker going along the top to let us know how long we're going for. Cool. We can record more. Great. And now we've got that sequence recorded. If we're going to see the sequence, we can go into here. So that is how you live record. Definitely play around with the settings in the main menu like I showed you, and have a little bit more of a read through the manual. There is a little bit more in there about all of those settings, but those are, yeah, definitely the more useful ones for me. Again, if we remove all of this and record, it's just going to go on indefinitely until we tell it to stop. Cool. All right, so back to the tutorial. So we can see that some of these notes are lit up and some of these notes are white. Probably should have mentioned this before. White is basically representing that there is more note information in this step than can be displayed on this grid at the time. So if we zoom in, we can see that those notes aren't white. There's just a lot of little notes in between. So depending on your view resolution, things might look slightly different. If we ever just want to remove all of the notes from a particular clip, hold this knob and press the back or undo button, and it's gone. So let's say, for example, for whatever reason, this sequence isn't recorded in right, maybe there's a bit of latency, maybe you want it to just happen a little bit later, depending on your resolution or what you want to do, just hold this knob in and give the top one a twist, and you can shift the entire sequence left or right, which is really useful in some circumstances. So to demonstrate the rest of the sequence's functionality, I'm going to switch over to a drum kit. However, there is something I want to do here. I was going to save this for another video purely because it's more about the effects section, but it fits into the sequencer really well. So up here, we have some effects that are pre-mapped to these gold knobs. We will be diving into the effects section in a later video, but I just wanted to show that you can actually select some of these and change the effect per step. It's pretty much just like a stepped automation. I think Electron kind of calls it parameter locking, but it can be really useful. So let's say on this particular step, we wanted to open up the filter all the way. Now when we hit play, we're going to hear that, but just on that one note. So let's do that to a few others. Maybe we'll play with the resonance a little bit on some of these. We can do that in here too. We'll just do these to a couple more here. So it's probably going to be a little bit chaotic, but let's have a listen. So yeah, we're not limited to just using the filter on these. We can throw in like reverb and delay and all of that sort of stuff. It's entirely up to us, but I just wanted to show that off. Cool, so I'm going to press song here, and just choosing one of the empty slots, we will start a kit track by pressing the kit button here. Just going to mute our bass track for the time being. So just like our synth track, we can scroll through some presets by choosing the select knob. I'm just going to leave it at the 0 mark for now. Of course, you can load in your own samples and go really nuts, but we're not going to be doing that in this video. So with a kit track, we can't use the isomorphic keyboard layout, and it'll flash kit to say, no, you can't because you're in a drum kit. So all we have to work with are these audition pads down the side. So let's just make a simple drum beat. And maybe we'll throw in some hi-hats here too. So yeah, this is, pretty much functioning just like our synth track here. But there are a couple of features that we didn't go over using the synth that I want to highlight here. This is our very basic drum beat. I might just remove some of those hi-hats. So up here we have a tempo knob. Can turn that down to pretty much not be moving at all, or we can crank it up to a ridiculous amount. I'm just going to put it back to 120. But if we hold shift, we can see that swing is written on this, and this affects the swing. So let's give that a little listen. Swing is a really good way just to add in that little bit of extra groove that you're missing in your track. I use it all the time. It's awesome. Also worth noting that you can swing like in the opposite direction too. But we're going to have it going up a bit. So let's say we go back to filling in these hi-hats here. I'm just going to add in a little bit of sidechain on these hi-hats just so that they're not terribly boring. And don't stress about that too much. As I said before, we'll get into the effect section later. But let's look at note repeats. So giving this hi-hat groove a listen. Maybe we want a double hit in here. So if we press this note and give this knob a twist while holding it down, we can see a number comes up on the screen. And that means that it's going to fit in 2 notes in that single step instead of the 1. And we can see that because it's turned white. We can even do this to the snare if we wanted. But I don't really like that. So yeah, holding in this knob and giving it a twist does a note repeat. We can also nudge notes. So let's say that we wanted a snare to happen just a little bit later. If we hold that and we give the top one a push and turn it to the right, we're basically nudging it to the right. If we can also nudge it back the other way, and you'll see it's moved over there. Let's just make it happen a little bit late. So yeah, that's like obviously too much. Maybe you just want it to be nudged something a little bit over. I like to use this predominantly on my hi-hat. So if you have more than 1 note selected and you do this, you'll see that it says right. So you've pretty much got to count the clicks as you're turning it. Also worth noting that this little double that we threw in, if we zoom in and up our resolution, you can see that it's just added in that double hit for us. So that's really useful. So let's say that, we wanted to shift more of these notes across, but we didn't want to have to hold things down and do them like individually. So what we can do is use a feature called cross screen. Cross screen is this little button here. If we activate it, whatever we do on this screen is going to be applied on the next few screens over here. So I'm just going to hold these 3 down and give them a twist to the right. These 2. And that's done that to the second bar. Obviously, because we'd already done this one, it hasn't applied it here. So I'll just go ahead and do those. But yeah, cross screen is really awesome. Even if we split this bar up and I just wanted a little open hi-hat, I can press that in here. And if we go across, we can see that it's also being applied in the second bar. We also have a triplet view that we can work with. So if we turn on triplet view, you'll see these white bars appear and we can't press into these. We can't do anything in there, but we can do things in between those gaps. So let's pick a sound. Maybe we'll do this one. All right, so that's triplet view. Pretty straightforward. Obviously, triplet view is going to depend on like what resolution you're zoomed in at. So if you already have it activated, when you zoom in, it's keeping the triplet view from this view, but it's just letting you zoom in a little bit more. If we turn that off and we zoom in and then activate triplet view, it's applying it from this resolution forward. I hope that that is clear. So yeah, whatever resolution you want triplet view to be at, make sure you're zoomed into that resolution before activating it. Finally, something else that I like to do, and I'm going to use cross screen for this, is making my second hi-hat's velocity slightly lower than the first. So what I'll do is select these 2 notes and give this a twist. This is our velocity. So if we turn that down, you can hear that it's getting slightly quieter. Now, if we wanted to adjust like the volume of some of these, we can just do this like we would with the effects section, which again, we will go into more detail later. We just need to make sure that effect entire is not on. If we use effect entire, it's going to apply that across all of these pads. But if we turn that off, it's just going to do it to the audition pad that is highlighted. So we can go up here and adjust the level of that click. And now's probably a good time to look at probability. So we've got a couple of options for probability. Let's say that I don't mind this last hit being in here, but I only want it to happen on the first playthrough of this. So what I mean by that is if I hold this and give the select knob a twist to the right, I can say that I want it to happen on the first of every 2 plays. Now it will only happen once, play a second time without it, and then it will loop back. Pretty cool. We could throw in a couple of these for good measure. Maybe in a better spot. All right, and using probability again, let's say I don't want this to happen all the time. If we turn this to the left with that note selected, we get a percentage value. So, you know, we could choose 50%, it's either going to happen or it's not, or we could give a lower value so that it rarely happens, or a higher value if we want it happening more often than not. It's worth noting too, if I put in another note and hold both of these and switch them to 50, it's usually going to pick between one or the other, but not play both at the same time. So let's just see what this sounds like with the bass part for now. Just going to sidechain that a little. Right, so let's say I'm not really happy with this sound happening right now, but I don't want to delete it. So if we just press on this, it's going to mute that pad. All right, so I think I've gone over pretty much most of what I wanted to cover for the sequencer, except for the new feature that the Deluge has introduced in their latest firmware update, and that is the playback direction. So let's just mute our drum track for now, and we'll go back into our bass. Just gonna zoom out here. All right, so we can actually play around with the playback direction of this track now. So if I press Shift and using the 5th pad in the top row, it is not labeled. There isn't a label for it yet in like any of the new Deluges either. It only just came out. Basically though, it's the pad right below this gold knob. Pressing that, we can choose whether we want this sequence to play forward, play in a ping pong direction, or play in reverse. So let's have a listen to this playing in reverse. If we choose ping pong, it's going to play forward and then backwards. Really, really useful way to throw in some variation on your mix. So going back to our drum track here, we can actually play the same way, forward or reverse or ping pong. But in order to do that for the whole thing, we need to make sure that effect entire is on. So if effect entire is on, we press the same pad as before by holding Shift, switch to ping pong. That's really cool and all, but what say we undo that, just go back to playing forward. Maybe we'll turn this one back on. So maybe we want to turn off effect entire and just alter some of these. So for example, if we wanted just this row to be playing in ping pong, we can hold this, press the pad that isn't labeled, and switch it to ping pong. Maybe we'll do the same thing with the snare. So let's throw in a new sound here. I'll just place something in randomly. That's cool. So let's say we want to edit the length of this sequence, but we only want to do it for certain rows. So we can do that now. If we hold this and twist this knob, the same one that we would do by holding shift to, lengthen or decrease the length of our track, hold this and give it a twist. And now we can see that little white bar is only happening just for this row. So now we can get some cool polyrhythmic stuff going. All right, so that's really cool and all, but there is one little problem with all of this, and I found a little bit of a workaround for it. I'm not sure if anybody else has figured this out yet, so I'm just going to mute all of these and just start up something kind of nice. Give me a minute here. I'm going to start a new synth. Just change it to be a sine wave. And let's just place in some notes, nice and randomly. Great. So because this is a synth track, if we try to just change the direction of one of these, we're actually not able to do it. If we press this and go ping pong, it ping pongs the entire sequence. That can be a real bummer, especially if you're trying to make like a lot of semi-generative sort of music, but there is actually a way around it. Just quickly though, it is worth noting that we can actually change the length of like individual bars like we could in the drum track. So let's say we wanted that feature available to us like we did in the drum track, how we want just one row ping-ponging back and forth and the rest aren't. So, I'll turn off ping-pong for now. We'll just select forward. What we're going to do is press kit, and this makes it a drum kit. Cool. So now we can select this row, change it to ping-pong. Maybe we'll do the same with this one down here. And we'll switch it back to being a synth track. And now the rest of the sequence is playing forward, but these two are ping-ponging back and forth. I don't know if that was left in intentionally, but either way, I'm really glad it's there because I was pretty bummed to find out that you couldn't do this by default. All right, so for the last step, I'm going to just clear off all of the notes from the sequence. And we'll reset these note lengths. And let's talk finally about Euclidean sequencing. So Euclidean sequencing was included in the latest firmware update as well. I've seen a lot of modular gear use it and other synthesizers. I've used it within Ableton. It's really cool and not too tricky to get the hang of when using the Deluge. So Euclidean sequencing kind of uses divisions to place in steps in a sequence. A lot of people like to use it because it's a way to add notes and mess around with them in a sequence without thinking too much, kind of just letting the synth take over. There's still a little bit of user input, but yeah, let's explore this. So if we hold down one of these notes and press this knob in and give it a twist, you'll see that notes start to appear and they're being divided evenly along the steps. If we keep going, we can get some unusual patterns. Maybe we'll just throw in a few like that. Let's throw in a couple more. Cool. At the moment, it sounds like this. I might just turn off those ping pong notes that I added in earlier. So we can move these notes around individually as well. So if we hold the audition pad and press this knob in and give it a twist, it shuffles them over. Also, if you want to do a lot of this stuff without hearing it while you're doing it, just hold shift when you're doing that, then you won't hear a thing. Just give these ones a little twist, and these ones too. Cool, so let's play around with some of the lengths of these. We can go really crazy and do that ping-ponging effect that we were talking about earlier with some of these tracks. Maybe just play one in reverse. Cool. I'm just going to add on a little bit of reverb and release. And, you know, if you want to, we can press Shift and Polyphony and change this to mono so that only one note is playing at a time. So this is really, really awesome. We can make these super long generative patches. You can, you know, apply more steps by zooming in and repeating the same process. And worth noting that it works on drums as well. So sometimes, you know, you might have a particular drum beat, like a simple 4 on a floor like we had before. And you just want to generate an interesting hi-hat rhythm, but you don't want to sit there programming it all. So we can just press this and twist it until we get something that we like. Maybe play with the note length a little bit. Maybe we want that one to play ping pong direction. And finally, just before I go, if you ever want to change the color of these clip rows, for example, I always like to have my bass purple so that I can pick it out from the crowd. Just hold Shift and give this knob a turn. We'll pick purple. Most of these ones are purple. Just be aware though that it's going to follow the colors of the isomorphic keyboard. So if we place one, you know, further up, which will be up here in that octave, you know, it's going to change color and keep changing color. But usually things are, you know, tightly wound. And I just like to make sure that I can at least be like, okay, this one is my bass. I always like to make my drums blue. So again, you can change the color of all of them at once. But if you hold down these audition pads and press Shift and do this, you can change the color of individual kit rows as well. You can only do this for drums, however. You can't do this for synth parts. But yeah, it can be really useful. And that way I always know that my blue line is going to bring in the drums and so on and so forth. Anyways, I hope that this has been useful to all of you. As this video series progresses, I am definitely hoping to do a couple of videos on workflow. So not so much about all of the programming stuff like what we just went over. We will be, you know, diving into learning the synth engine, how to create your own patches and save your patches and use the effects in creative ways. But I definitely want to do a few videos in this series that particularly talk about workflow and different ideas and things that you can experiment with to start making music and get running with it pretty fast. So yeah, I hope this has been informative to all of you, and hit the like if you like, and if you don't, tell me why. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.